Well, Arise U.S. correspondent Eric Ham is at the Capitol in Washington, and he joins us from there now. Good to see you, Eric. Let's start with that history-making Supreme Court confirmation hearing on Capitol Hill where you are. Day 2 today. Has it been more or less contentious than expected?
Well, it's been explosive, just much like we had thought that it would be, Charles. We have already seen a number of Republicans push the nominee on her views. In fact, we saw from Senator Lindsey Graham, who was still griping over the fact that one of his potential nominees was not picked, Judge Michelle Childs, who we know that President Biden has already nominated to the appellate court. He asked about whether or not this current nominee was aware of some of the criticisms that were levied at her. He also pushed her on serving as a public defender, where she had to defend members from Guantanamo Bay, members who were involved in the 9/11 attack. And we saw an explosive back and forth between Senator Lindsey Graham and the chairman of the committee, Senator Dick Durbin, over this very issue that actually saw Senator Lindsey Graham storm out. So it's already been very explosive today, but it didn't stop there. We saw Senator John Cornyn again push the nominee, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, on her philosophy. One of the major questions that Republicans want answered, and they haven't gotten it yet, is they want to learn more about her judicial philosophy. But what we are seeing here is that Judge Ketanji Brown has made clear that there is no real philosophy that she has in terms of how she actually goes about adjudicating cases. But what she did say is that there is a methodology that she does adhere to, a strict methodology, which mostly relies on sentencing guidelines that are actually made by Congress. And this is something that she has talked about in great detail during this hearing. In addition to that, yesterday we saw those explosive criticisms levied at the nominee by Senator Josh Hawley. Well, today we saw Senator Dick Durbin, the chairman of the committee, come to her defense on these very issues, striking them down one by one, naming a number of media outlets that said that these amounted to basically a baseless attack on the judicial character of the nominee. So of course we're watching and waiting to see how Josh Hawley will respond to these very pointed comments by the chairman of the committee. But just as we thought that it would be an explosive hearing with a number of Republicans grilling her on a range of issues, that is what we are seeing play out. And Charles, this is expected to be a marathon day with already 4 hours down. There are expected to be at least another 4 to 5 hours of Q&A taking place today.
And Eric, these appointments are generally quite significant, aren't they, given the role the Supreme Court plays? But there is a certain symbolic importance, if she does get confirmed, that she'd be the first black woman justice on the Supreme Court. Briefly.
Yeah, that's right. We're talking a lifetime appointment on the court. It will not, her appointment, if appointed, will not change the trajectory of the court. You will still have a 6-3, which is dominated by conservatives. But still, when you look at the number of key cases that are before the court, her in part on the court could certainly, many believe, sway possibly some of those justices, namely the Chief Justice, John Roberts.
Eric, let's turn to Ukraine and President Biden's warning that as the Kremlin's war continues to make slow progress, Mr. Putin could well up the ante in Ukraine by deploying biological and chemical weapons. I mean, flesh that out for us.
Yeah, in fact, we're already seeing some level of intensity in terms of the attacks that we're seeing now. Moscow is now resorted to using hypersonic missiles. We are seeing the city of Mariupol, which has been completely destroyed, that to the point where now it's no longer even recognizable. And we heard from the Pentagon secretary where he said that he believes that Russia is actually scrapping the bottom of the barrel in terms of its munitions that are being used on the ground. But also we heard from the Pentagon spokesperson, Jeff Kirby, who says that the United States will continue to provide the necessary capabilities for the Ukraine to be able to push back on the Russian invasion. Already we have seen today where Ukraine has already retaken a major suburb of the city of Kiev. So the fighting continues, but also what we're seeing more importantly is Ukraine continues to equip itself in a way that clearly the Russians had not expected.
And presumably, Eric, the fact that President Biden has raised this issue of chemical and biological weapons publicly in is an attempt to warn Russia off such a move. I mean, Mr. Biden must consider that there is a realistic prospect of it happening.
Yeah, in fact, what we have seen from this White House is continuing to call out what they believe to be false flags, which is a way for Russia to then engage in attacks that we know or that the U.S. intelligence believes are coming. Just recently, we saw the Russians attack a mall in Ukraine where they said that there were munitions that were being stored there. Of course, that the Ukrainians have denied that, but what we continue to see is that Russia continues to engage in attacks that now the Pentagon has said shows evidence of war crimes by Russia. So not only is the war continuing to ratchet up on the ground, Charles, but what we are seeing is in terms of the international space, in terms of the criminality that could be attributed to Russia, that also is becoming clearer and clearer. And we've already heard from the State Department that they will be a major part of any investigation looking at war crimes by Russia.
And Eric, there is a big trip ahead for Mr. Biden, isn't there? Later this week, he's in Brussels and Poland, and Ukraine topping the agenda at both meetings.
Absolutely. In fact, we know that meeting is going to be highly anticipated by many people. And we do know that, of course, Poland is going to make that request for a NATO peacekeeping mission. Many are going to be watching to see how the United States will respond.
Eric, thanks ever so much. Eric Ham, Arise US correspondent, talking to me there from the Capitol in Washington.